Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Gary Holt from Exodus and formerly from Slayer, and you're listening to The Razor's Edge.
This is Matt from the Razor's Edge, and I'm going to be speaking to Mike, who is the head honcho of Lizard King Promotions. How are you doing?
All right, yeah. How you doing, Matt? You good?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Just trying to make the most of the heating in my flat. It's got really cold lately, but I'm okay. I'm all right.
Yeah, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that coldness, that winter cold, winter chills, man.
Of course, of course. I understand you've had quite a busy weekend then.
Yeah. So obviously, outside is part of what I do with Lizard King is also manage Ritual King, who have been busy touring their brand new album Infinite Mirror, and they had the home show on Saturday, which was hosted at Factory, with a whole host of other bands and stuff like that. And it was well attended. It did really well, to be fair. It's really good. It had some few technical issues, but still, still worked out well. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. It was a killer lineup. Like there was I don't know, like five or six bands on. And I've seen Thunderhoof and Battalions before, but they look great. They look really good.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. Everyone was like, people always say, and it sounds fairly sort of generic when people say bring their own games, but
Yeah.
because it was like almost like a mates fest,
Mhm.
it was just like it was the even though it was like a show full of lots of tones and riffs and the rest of it,
Yeah.
the because everyone was mates and there's camaraderie between all the bands that have either toured together or shared bills and stuff like that. The atmosphere was still relaxed, even though it was um, energetic but relaxed, if that even makes sense a little bit.
No, I totally get that. I think when you play music like Ritual King do, or a lot of the other bands on the bill, it's I think it lends to that quite nicely. So no,
Yeah.
that's cool. And Lizard King Promotions, I love the name. What does it mean though? Like, who is the Lizard King? Are you the Lizard King?
Yeah, I suppose it's an inherited name as such.
Mhm.
It comes from Jim Morrison from the '60s psychedelic group The Doors, which I've been a fan for a while. I decided to get a dedication when I was about 21, of a chameleon with a crown, the lizard king on my arm, which kind of almost like cemented that idea. Um, I've been loving music for a long time. It seemed that when an opportunity arose for me to start putting on shows, which
Yeah.
was about 13 years ago now, or well, 12, 13 years ago now, that is what became the name. It was the natural progression. Like, if I was going to name it, what do I name it? It's Lizard King. So it's my kind of like dedication to both being a fan of that music and that era of music and stuff like that, and obviously Jim Morrison serving as an inspiration of like the man that sort of defies the general thing, the Lizard King. He does his own thing, but also it's in time it's ended up being it's gone full circle because obviously they're a '60s psychedelic band, and at the time when I very first started, I wasn't putting on music like that.
Mhm.
As years have gone by, we've almost moved. It's sort of grown into the name where we're putting on music that almost matches the origins of the name itself, which is kind of cool,
Really,
in a way. Yeah.
I get that.
So,
I know that your big focus with Lizard King at the moment is Cvltfest Resurrected, which is in February 2024. So yeah, it's a resurrection of Cvltfest. Why does now feel like the right time to bring the festival back after a few years of not doing it?
so, um, so we did 2 years of Cult Fest, originally in Scunthorpe, which is where I live, and we did up until 2018 was doing regular promotions locally at a couple of different venues, mostly Cafe Independent, which hosted the first two shows. The idea for the festival itself was inspired by a whole noise collective gig, where it was one of the first times I'd come across 1968 Battalions and Ritual King, almost a combination that we've seen over the weekend as well. But having seen other bands like Gert and Elephant Tree and things like that, I've been wanting for years to maybe have a one stage Monsters of Stoner Rock sort of thing. You know, could we achieve something? Could we bring it to a small town? And after we did it for a couple of years, and then just life and different things like meant that the festival just didn't continue as much as I wanted to. It didn't. We tried to bring it back before, and life and various other things just sort of nullified it. So we concentrated on the other brand, which was Riffolution, which had been continuously going for, you know, like for the last 5 or 6 years, and on the back of the success of Riffolution and wanting to also sort of bring back more sort of heavier bands into the thing, we wanted to have a brand that could potentially bridge that. So more Riffolution, having more sort of stoner and lighter stuff, but a mixture. And then Cvltfest maybe pushing more the heavier side of that genres as well, but it's still been on point with the both the same sort of themes that we've both been working with, but maybe just sort of having the cult side of it, maybe having a different edge to Riffolution, you know, and then trying to find the balance between the two brands and having two different identities, but still connected, if that makes sense.
I think having Conan and June as your two headliners for the Friday and Saturday makes sense, because they're both kind of part of that sphere, but also a little bit more on the heavier or more, well, in June's case, the more technical side. But then if you look at the rest of the bill, like, it's still rooted in sort of the music that followed on from Black Sabbath and
yeah,
kind of things. So yeah, I see that identity definitely.
So yeah, it was the idea of trying to bring the brand back. You know, like we almost had last year we basically had to scale Riffolution back. You know, we tried to grow something ambitiously too big and tried to change too many things all in one hit. And it was like post-COVID, post lots of other stuff like that. So there's a lot of people jostling for the same crowds. There's a lot of trust issues with venues closing, gigs cancelling last second, bands getting ill, and the list goes on. But, you know, we all sort of lived through that moment. And we, in our sort of, when we came back with Riffolution 2021, it sold out. And we sort of went off the success of that and scaled it up, like, you know, put it to 11 when we should have been like at 7. You know, we've done 6, maybe we can go to 7. That's a little bit more, but no, we went to 11 and it was too much. And even though ticket sales and stuff was going well, it wasn't enough. It was kind of like at a point where we were, if we continued, we would have bankrupted ourselves. So we had to make a very difficult decision to scale it down, change it to one stage, get back to basics, one stage, solid lineup, one venue, not multi-stage, not multi-days and stuff like that, and then grow it again, you know, and then, you know, just get back to the sensibleness. This is why, you know, this year's was a two-day event, but we ended up having some last-minute changes, and it became one day only because of illness again from bands and stuff. So we had to sort of think on our toes, but on the back of all the many changes and stuff will happen in the background logistically and stuff like that, we thought that we could up it to a 2-day festival, and we wanted to have both brands in the same town, because that's basically, you know, me ideally moving stuff from east to west was the fact that there's a bigger footfall, there's more reliability. We've been building the brands are interlinked, and we wanted to offer a bit more of a wider scope while having two separate identities which interacted and stuff like that, but also trying to keep it at a reasonable level that didn't sort of exceed what we could actually manage, or and didn't ticket price and stuff like that. It kept it sensible. That was the idea anyway, and that's what we're hoping to then build on that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was going to go to ask, like, how was COVID, or sort of this post-COVID world that we live in now? How's that changed promoting? What are the big challenges that have come from it? But I think you've answered that with kind of how people are more reluctant to buy tickets until it's quite close to the day of the festival, which must be quite nerve-wracking for people trying to put on a big event like Riffolution. I mean, you saw how many festivals were cancelled last year.
Yeah.
But it's good that you're at least ambitious and trying to make things bigger and better rather than let's stick to what we know. It is good as as someone who likes going to festivals, as a punter, it's good to see that there's people who still want to expand and do bigger and better. But
yeah,
that's good. And as a promoter, from your point of view, like you must get a lot of bands trying to get your attention. I imagine you get a lot of emails like, "Can I play on your bill? Can I play here?"
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what's the best way for a band to really get your attention if they're trying to play somewhere? For all the hundreds of emails you must get, what's the best way for you to notice them?
Sometimes it's literally timing. Like we like you say that, yeah, we do get a lot of emails. Got people in the DMs, people in the all the different socials that you can possibly be. I think I even had someone once that applied or tried to send some sort of information via, I don't know if there's bands in town. It was one of the. It was basically where we sold the merchandise, but they sent a message through the merchandise to send like a thing, which I liked it. I found it funny because it was ambitious. It made me laugh. So, but like when I've spoken to bands before about like the best way of approaching it, sometimes I just say, look, we kind of have to sort of vibe with the band. I guess we kind of have to be like, we might be aware of a band and they might not be aware that we're aware of them, but we're like, we know people have put you on, or we know we've heard stuff about you and stuff. And when we've been receiving things, it might be a case of we might be looking for a band at the time and it lands in the inbox at that particular right moment. We've gone, actually, we do have a slot. But quite often or not, the organic way is the way I always think is how we've booked, is in like, we've gone to a festival, we've gone to something that's not ours. Yeah. We've seen a band, we've been impressed, we've got talking to them, and then, you just like go, yeah, we'd like to do something. And it's just a case of like, when can we find an appropriate slot for it? Because we might have things coming that we haven't announced or whatever like that. And we just be like, but they're not right for it, And there's been many times like, over the years where I've been like, there's been bands I've wanted to work with and there's just not been the right slot. There's just not been the right gig, and that's a little bit like for Cvltfest Resurrected, because there's been bands on there that we've not worked with outside of the last time we had a Cvltfest, or the last time I was playing host for Metal to the Masses for Bloodstock. We've had another stage to put these people onto. So, and we've been looking, we've tried to, when we've been looking, you've got to look at it two different ways when you sort of building a festival and things like that. You've got to think, I am a fan, I love this band, blah, blah, blah. But you've also then got to think business side, like, will they sell any tickets? We've got to balance our, I suppose, fandom with the business side of it. And that's got the better side of us before. We've been too much fans and not thinking business, and it's sort of like an unfortunate sort of thing when you sort of get into the music scene, that you've got to think about both these things and finding that balance between the two. And that's a little bit with us booking as well. So it'd been like, we want to work with them, but would it be a risk? Are we risking who's taking the risk here. So there's so many different factors in it. But I mean, like, I suppose bottom line, if we really, really do like a band and we get it and we understand them and we like what they're doing, we like the image, or we just like them as people, you know, we'll book them. I mean, that kind of answers things and doesn't at the same time, but there's so many different factors in it. We'd love to put every band on that we like, but we always think there's more bands than there is slots. And sometimes it's a case, like, if we see a band, the two main reasons for us booking a band is the right place, the right time, and us seeing them somewhere else. That's probably the bottom line. But there's other little things as well that can, you know, end up being on our radar to book stuff.
I can totally relate. I put on a couple of shows in Birmingham about a year ago, just for myself and a few others, like people I knew, because, you know, I either wanted to bring them to Birmingham or you know, play myself, do a headline show, and then I had, you know, suddenly for about a month I just had a load of people and I didn't know. Maybe I'd heard of the band. They're like messaging me like, "Oh, hey, can you put my band on this date at this time for this fee?" And I was like, probably not. No, I mean, I don't know who you are to start off with. I think at least forging that connection has always got to be the number one if you're trying to get something out of someone. And I realised very quickly that I couldn't put on as many gigs as I wanted to because all the bands I wanted to bring to Birmingham charged a fee, and you know, whether I was going to make that money back from the bands I was putting on over here and their own ticket sales, it's not necessarily the most viable when I've got bills to pay and things to save for, and it's really difficult. I think it's so difficult. But you know, if you could make it work for yourself, then all power to you.
The last thing you want to ever do as a promoter is having to go to a hole in the wall or do a bank transfer from your own personal pocket, which I have done in the past, and I'm like, this is not, like, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't do this all the time. One-offs, yeah, okay, but you've got at one point, you know, this is where a lot of promoters over the years have disappeared because they've obviously made losses which they'll either never make back again, or they've had to just swallow the losses and just sort of crack on, and that's a shame. You know, I'd much prefer to, like, not take a show on than go out of business taking it on and losing out, you know. And that's an unfortunate sort of side effect of obviously the music scene, because there's so many different shows, there's so many different factors and things like that, but you've also got you kind of got to look out for number one to make sure that it's sustainable. Otherwise, like our decision last year when we had to scale things back, that was hard to do that because we'd already started advertising big bands. You know, we'd had Chalk Fighters and Godflesh, and these are all agreed. These are signed agreements, things like that. But we're at this point where contracts were going to go live and stuff was going to start happening. We just had to be honest with the agents and the other promoters and bands and stuff like that. We've not done the tickets, we've not done the numbers. We need to scale this back. You know, we're going to be upfront and honest about it, because, you know, if you say due to unfortunate circumstances, it's, well, what is that? You know, we'd much prefer to be sort of honest with the punters and honest with the agents, which meant that moving forward, we hadn't shot ourselves in the foot, which meant we could still book with them moving forward. Obviously, they might be like a little bit hesitant, but we've sort of, at least we were upfront. This is what we've done. This is where we need to be. We're not there. And this is what we're trying to do to try and fix the problem, you know, and it was, I think the idea was like learning when to sort of step back and sort of grow, you know, marginally rather than, you know, try and scale up too quickly, which I think that's why some festivals, you know, like you mentioned earlier, some festivals just came and went. You know, they had incredible lineups. They had lineups that were like, wow, that's really quite cool. I'd love to see that happen. And then I don't think they made the right decisions at the right time, and they ended up financially, you know, crumbling, where we made decisions and watched from the sidelines these things happen, and I had to have these difficult conversations where we're thinking about we might need to scale it down, and it was kind of we need to scale it down now. We need to make a plan to do so, and we don't know if we want to be in that position again. So it's a bit like, so back to obviously the booking of the bands. It's kind of like we always are now a little bit cautious to what we book and what we take on, but we feel like a little bit seasoned to like the darker side of the bookings where things have gone wrong and we've had to fix it. So we kind of in a way like we will always try and make a business plan of booking these bands if we can, and if we can make it work, we will, basically.
Of course. Mike, let's talk about music. I mean, we've talked about bands that we like without really naming any. We're coming up to the end of the year, which means that album of the year lists are coming out. There's obviously been a very significant release about 10 days ago in your world, with the Ritual album out now on Riffle Music. But what else have you been vibing with this year?
There has been so many bands this year that have released, some phenomenal albums. It just caught me off guard here, like trying to name some albums. What have I been enjoying recently? Let me get my list. That's right. I've got a list of bands, so let me just try and find my list, and I'll be able to.
My standout of the year would probably be the new Baroness album. I've just not been able to stop listening it since it's come out. They've always been a favourite of mine.
That's on my to listen list, to be honest. Baroness, because a few people have said, "Have you checked it out?" And I was like, "I haven't actually." I've been getting suggestions of all the bands I haven't been checking out. I was thinking, well, I've done quite a substantial. I've been trying to keep a list of it, like almost a bit of an obsessive list of it, like where the band's from, their album name, and a little bit of detail about it, just to keep track of it, basically. I'm trying to find my little list here. Just
that's all right.
Prompt.
I will stall by talking about more albums I've been listening to. That really is the question, isn't it? Actually, I really liked. It's not kind of similar to stuff you're putting on, but the Tortured Demon album that came out in the summer, I was really impressed with. Those lads are doing really well at the moment.
I think them. Where are those guys based? Are they from?
If I'm not wrong.
Oldham.
Yeah.
They won. Did they win Metal to the Masses last year? Manchester. Was that those guys, or they certainly played Bloodstock?
Yeah, I saw them at Bloodstock on the Jaeger stage in 2021. So I'm thinking
maybe
to the Masses, but they're killing it at the moment for sure. And I mean the listener won't be able to see this, but I'm wearing my This Summit Fever t-shirt. They released a really good EP around about Easter time, I want to say, and they're going to be opening for Ritual King in Birmingham.
Yes, they are. Yeah,
I believe it's on Saturday, if I'm not wrong.
It's the first, which is
Friday. Yes, unfortunately, it is my work Christmas do, but I send all my best regards to the Ritual King boys and the This Summit Fever guys, who I know very well. They're doing really well at the moment as well.
Yeah, we think we were meant to have them play a show, but they didn't actually. They weren't able to actually make it work. I can't quite remember what gig that was. It was back in summertime sometime. Just trying to think what gig that was we had on. It might have been when we had Volcanova from Iceland.
I do remember you had Earl of Hell and Callus, I want to say, on that bill.
Yes.
Yeah,
Callus, I
think one of them had COVID from the This Summit Fever camp, but
I think so. Yeah.
That looks a really strong bill. I don't know Volcanova, but I know the other two bands, having played with them. And that looks really strong.
I've got my list in front of me. of different. It's a bit ridiculous in scale. So, it got like fresh albums. I'm just reminding myself because I've listened to probably about 10 albums in the last week or so or more. Celeste's new EP, that's really good, fantastic band. What else have I listened to? Underdark.
Oh yeah.
Or Upside Down Wallowing, as I like to call them,
Right.
they've got such a similar sort of, simple, the rest of it.
Okay.
I think Drain. I've been enjoying my hardcore releases this year. Drain's one that sort of crept up on me. I started getting into the last album this year, and they dropped a fresh album this year, sort of old school crossover hardcore
Cool.
stuff. Obviously it's Ritual King, Infinite Mirror as well. So all plug for those guys, which is a good, for your stoner stuff. That's pretty good. But there's been so many releases, like the UK, and I think the UK is almost matched pound for pound or riff for riff against some of the American releases that's out there. Witch Hazel dropped a new album. We're playing on the 9th. That's our final show. That's a really good one. Acid Thrones album, that was pretty good, and Burner as well. Quite enjoyed that. Pupil Slicer, another one from UK. Now I've got my prompt. I'm like, yes, these are all these are all good albums. But there's been so much stuff. It's not just Wallowing or Wallowing itself. That was a good release. But yeah, there's so much. It's hard to sort of, like, someone asked me the other day if you were to make a top 10. I'm like, that's going to be hard. That's going to be quite hard to do. Like, what country, what genre?
I need to do my top 5 or 10 for the Razor's Edge kind of end of year list, and it's like, where do I start? I mean, I've worked on a couple with my PR and social media duties that have been incredible. But then there's so many more, and so many I've not listened to. Like the Witch Hauser one that you mentioned, I only saw them for the first time at Bloodstock just by kind of chance. I happened to be there after Witch Star, and I thought, okay, let's see what these guys in white spandex are like. And I was like, wow, this is really good. I've got to go check them out. And I've still not listened to that album, So that's something for my.
Well, if you like Judas Priest and Wishbone Ash and kind of a bit of sprinkle of Iron Maiden mashed together, they are that. They are all of that. They're all those are the sort of the bands that sort of got me into rock and metal in the first place. And to hear a British band that is, be releasing an album that sound anything like those and doing it well, like it doesn't feel like a copy and paste. It feels like, I feel Witch Hazel could be, in terms of a band that's sort of up and coming, they could probably match the scale of how Greenlung's gone, I reckon, with enough exposure. I think they seem to have that about them. Greenlung's a band from the scene that were on a lot smaller bills 4 or 5 years ago, but they are selling out shows, and just completed a tour with Boscoloid the other day. So, and Witch Hazel, I think, are supporting them next weekend. After our after the show we've got them with, actually. So.
See, yeah, it does seem as around Witch Hazel at the moment. I think the retro thing is definitely popular at the moment. But I mean, with stoner or doom bands, you see a lot of bands that are, as you say, kind of copy and pasting the classic bands a little bit. But Witch Hazel felt really quite genuine when I saw them. And Church of the Cosmic Skull are another band with that 70s vibe that feel very convincing when you're there in front of it, So
yeah, Church of the Cosmic Skull. Yeah, I'd like to say they're friends of ours as well, and we caught them at Bloodstock earlier this year, and then obviously they headlined Riffolution this year, which was really cool. It was actually a bit of a full circle moment, because last year I went to go see him at Manchester Academy. At that point, we weren't even talks with that venue, and to be sort of stood there in September watching them play again, but obviously playing Riffolution, it was kind of like, yeah, this we weren't even talking about you guys playing Riffolution last year. We weren't even talking about Riffolution being at this venue last year. We were sort of patching up, the change where we played it. It ended up being a Gorilla last minute, and like it was kind of like a full circle moment. Thinking this is really cool. This is it feels like it's something growing. But the fact that those guys were on board and it was in the same venue, we had such a good time on almost a year previously, I think, on their headline tour. It just felt like a good moment. But they're certainly a band that I can, they've done 2 tours of America post COVID, which, most bands haven't, got out the start. The gun's gone off. They haven't even left the starting grid. These guys have hit America twice and a UK tour and some festivals, in Europe and in the UK. And I was thinking of a band that's sort of, I don't know, maybe been affected by the lockdowns and things like that. They've certainly doubled down on coming back, and it's really encouraging to see that from a British band to be able to do America and Europe and stuff like that. It just kind of, you feel this kind of normality, but also like, it can be achieved, even if they're doing DIY or whatever like that. It's not impossible. It's just a case of there's some hard graft behind it. And, their working ethic is incredible, to be honest, that band.
Yeah, I think it's a hell of an achievement, like you say. I think for a lot of British bands, like being able to play in America once is like a big hallmark moment. They've gone and done it twice after COVID, so yeah, hats off to them, so to speak, I guess. But yeah, it's good. It's so good to see them doing well. And it must have been a great moment to see them sort of headline your festival after watching them a year before. But yeah, Mike, we're going to have to shortly wrap this up. But what are you hoping for Christmas this year, as we are now a month away?
I'm hoping for world peace. Yeah, more peacefulness. In general, like peace in places of conflict in general. When we're talking world scale, on a personal scale, more peace in life, I guess. On a musical scale, a resurrection of a cult, and maybe that Tenacious D moment where we sell out and we can pay the rent. That would be cool. So that's what I hope for Christmas. Yeah, just a good time. Encourageable sales for some of our shows for next year, and just good vibes moving forward for everyone involved in my life, I guess. That's quite a nice sentiment, I guess.
No, it's a very festive note to end on. But yeah, for next year, 23rd and 24th of February, we do have Cvltfest featuring June, Conan, Mastiff, Pine, 100-year-old man. God, I'm just trying to name from memory here. I hope I haven't named anyone who isn't playing one of those 2 days. But yes, there's some incredible bands on. I'm looking forward to it. And anyone who's listening, get it in your calendars because it's going to be sweet.
Yeah, it's exciting to see it on paper, to have all these bands agree that I'm lucky enough to call some of them my friends and stuff, and some of them have been there. Like in the beginning, Mastiff. This will be, they're pretty much like the house Cvltfest band. They've played all of them, but they weren't even when I first worked with Jim, and Dennett from Battalions was still in it. They were a 4-piece. They didn't even have a name at one point. I said to you, you're gonna have to come back to me with your name before I book you. That's a basic, Jim. Come on. and then it's nice to see these bands then go on and get signed to agencies and see people in agencies go up. Like they're under Tyler, who's now working with a tonal agency. So it's almost like it's a tonal fest. It's turned into, because there's loads of bands that are now signed to that thing, but that's just how things have happened. So it's nice to see people progress in the industry, both agents and music, and be doing well, especially years after maybe initially working with them. Mastiff, for example, 10 years ago or so when I first worked with them, or 8 years ago, something like that. So it's nice to have that repeat. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it doing well, and hopefully it's the resurrection. It's the start of something moving forward. It's back. That's what we hope.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's going to be good. I've got it in my calendar. Mike, lastly, I want to thank you for your time. It's been good to have a catch up. If I don't see you before Cvltfest, have a great Christmas and look after yourself.
Yeah, you too, mate. You too. Thank you very much for inviting me along.
You're welcome. All right, mate. Take it easy.
Yeah, take care. All right. Thank you.
That's all right. This has been Mike from Lizard King Promotions on the Razor's Edge.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you keep up to date with future episodes by subscribing to our channels. For more information on this podcast, or for all the latest music news, reviews, interviews and more, head over to our website, www.therazorsedge.rocks.